All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are jumping right into the launch of Anno 117. It just dropped on November 13th, and the community is already buzzing.
Oh, it's buzzing. And we're seeing these two, completely different conversations happening at the same time on the Rano subreddit. It's fascinating.
It really is. On one hand, you have this pure joy over some very specific, very niche pop culture jokes.
And on the other, a really sharp technical debate about the game's localization that, kind of gets to the heart of what it's like to develop a huge AAA game today.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack, this duality. You have the Anno 117 team, who clearly spent time making sure a Monty Python joke lands perfectly, but then maybe they missed some basic stuff in their own native language.
Yeah, it forces you to ask where the priorities are, right?
Yep, exactly.
The thing that really stands out to me is the contrast between what's intentional and what's not. The humor is so deliberate, it's crafted for a very specific audience. But the localization flaws, they feel accidental, like the result of just moving too fast or maybe relying on automated tools. It's a real peek behind the curtain.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We have to start where the community started, which is the meme machine. The absolute center of gravity here is the name Biggus Dickus.
It has completely taken over. I mean, the main post we're looking at is literally titled, Biggus Dickus, I shall release Brian.
Which is, of course, a direct pull from Monty Python's Life of Brian. A perfect fit for a Roman-era game like Anno 117.
And the fans didn't just get the joke, they ran with it. We saw one user, Sonnet McGee, who was proudly like, yep, I'm another one, named my first governor Biggus Dickus.
So it became this instant, community-wide inside joke.
Yes, but here's the best part. It wasn't just the players. Users quickly found out that Biggus Dickus is actually in the game's random name pool for governors.
Oh, wow. So the developers baked the joke in from the start.
They baked it right in. They knew exactly what they were doing. It shows a real confidence in their audience.
And you could see how that just sparked so much creativity. It wasn't just people copying the same name over and over.
Not at all. They were riffing on it. We saw someone name their governor Biggus Dickus.
Which is just...
Yeah.
It's so silly, but it fits that, that fake Roman naming convention perfectly.
Right. And then you have the people who went all in. My favorite was the player who admitted to naming himself Dungus Hilarious and his main ship Titus Maximus.
And he followed it up by saying he's in his late 30s and his wife is, quote, married to a fool.
That's the social glue right there.
Yeah.
That shared slightly childish sense of humor. It's not just Python either. People spotted other names like Dominiatrix and even a reference to Terry Pratchett's Discworld.
So they clearly know their audience.
Yeah.
Fantasy fans, comedy fans, it all overlaps.
Exactly. They've paid such careful attention to these cultural details, which is what makes this next part so weird.
Right. So despite the game actively creating characters with these names that are, let's be honest, pretty suggestive, one player discovered that they couldn't name their own island Biggus Dickus. The game just wouldn't let them.
Yeah, it was completely censored. It just showed up as a string of asterisks. So the name is fine for an NPC generated by the game, but it's forbidden if a player tries to type it in themselves.
So what's going on there? It feels like a total disconnect.
Well, the most likely thing is that you have two different systems at work. You have the developer's hand-curated list of funny, acceptable NPC names.
Okay.
And then you have a totally separate, probably automated and very aggressive profanity filter for anything the player types. And clearly those two systems aren't talking to each other. It's a classic QA oversight.
So let's talk about how these characters actually, function in the game. The original post mentioned that Biggus Dickus was a specialist they got from a festival.
Right, and it costs 5,000 denarii, which is not cheap.
And that's the bridge from the humor to the actual gameplay mechanics. Specialists in Anno are a huge deal. They give you these major bonuses.
Oh, yeah. They can boost production, cut costs. They're not just for show. So a 5,000 denarii price tag tells you this character, this joke, is actually a really valuable game asset.
Which immediately got people asking, are festivals the only way to get these top-tier specialists? It grounds the whole silly discussion in real strategy.
It adds a layer of fun to the grind, for sure. And before we move on, we have to mention the user who responded to the original post.
Oh, yes.
The post was about releasing the specialist from prison, and someone just replies, pretending to be him, with, "Please do, it's sweaty in this cell."
Just perfect. A perfect end to the comedy part of this. But now we have to pivot, because this is where it gets really interesting and, frankly, a bit frustrating for some players.
This is where the praise starts. We're talking about the game's German localization.
Right. The main issue centers on this one specific phrase. Gutschrift bei Empfehlung.
which, if you translate it literally, means something like credit upon recommendation. And German-speaking players were immediately like, this makes no sense at all in the context of the game.
And the immediate conclusion everyone jumped to was,
AI translation. They figured the developers just ran some text through an automated tool, and the result was this confusing, clunky phrase that just, quote, kind of sucks.
okay, so on the surface, it just looks like a lazy mistake. But what's so fascinating is that there seemed to be a very complicated, very ethical reason for this weird phrasing.
Exactly. Someone with more context explained that the development team made a very specific conscious decision to avoid using the German word for sell when you're transferring specialists.
Why? Why would they avoid that?
Because in a historical game, the idea of selling people, even virtual ones, gets uncomfortable. It has obvious, very negative connections to slavery and human trafficking.
Ah, I see. So they were trying to be sensitive to the historical setting.
Precisely. They tried to reframe the entire transaction so you, the player, aren't selling a person. You're acting as a sort of headhunter or an employment agent.
So you're referring them to a new job.
Exactly. And the money you get isn't a price, it's a finder's fee, a credit upon recommendation.
The intention there is actually really admirable, but the execution, the final wording, is so awkward that it ends up looking exactly like what they were trying to avoid, a bad machine-generated translation.
It's a perfect example of good intentions getting completely lost in translation, literally.
And this is where the paradox comes in, the thing that makes the German community especially upset about this. The game was developed in Mainz, in Germany.
Yeah. You'd think a German studio would have, German speakers on staff. People who could look at this and say, hey, this sounds weird, let's fix it.
That's the core of the critique.
Yeah.
How does this happen? And the community has pieced together a few really plausible theories.
The first one is just about the reality of global game development. Even though the studio is in Germany, there's a good chance that all the internal work, the coding, the design documents, it's all done in English.
English is the lingua franca of the tech world.
It is. So if the original design document says referral fee, then the German version becomes, ironically, a translation even for the German team. And that's where the nuance gets lost.
The second theory is just about pressure and resources. Anno 1800 was a massive success.
It's a huge long-term success.
So the theory is that for Anno 117, they were maybe short on time or manpower and just leaned on AI tools to get through the massive amount of text a game like this has.
And you can see evidence for that. Users pointed out that the English voice acting is on a whole other level. It's polished, it's great. It suggests they put their human resources into the high-profile stuff.
And let the machines handle the static UI text.
Right. It's that classic trade-off between speed and quality. But what's great is that the community didn't just complain. They offered a solution.
They did. They suggested a much better term.
They suggested Vermittlungsprämie. It means something like placement premium or transfer bonus.
Yeah.
It's professional, it's clear.
And it still avoids the whole problematic selling people thing.
Perfectly. It's the kind of nuanced, culturally aware choice you'd expect from a human expert, not a machine. It's what German players felt they deserved from a local studio.
Absolutely. The whole thing is just so frustrating because it's a blemish on a game that otherwise shows so much love for its audience, especially with all the humor we just talked about.
It really does.
So when you put it all together, what does this tell us about Anno 117 right now? You have this game that is just brilliant at weaving in these super specific targeted jokes.
Monty Python, Discworld. They know their players' cultural diet. They've built this amazing bond.
But at the very same time, that success is sitting right next to this struggle with the basic technical execution of its own native language. It's like the game has two personalities.
One is this lovingly curated, handcrafted experience full of jokes, and the other feels rushed, automated, and kind of lacking that human touch where it really counts.
And I think this leaves us and you with a really good question as we watch where global gaming goes from here. You have developers trying to build these deeply immersive worlds, but they're also under incredible pressure.
Time, budget, scale.
Exactly. And they're relying more and more on these powerful AI tools that are fast, but, well, they're context blind. So how do you protect that essential linguistic nuance and technical accuracy in that environment?
It's the challenge of our era, really. Finding that balance between scale and soul, or in this case, between Governor Biggus Dickus and perfect German grammar.
And that's probably the perfect place to leave it. That wraps up our deep dive into the launch of Anno 117. We'll catch you next time.